Hello, my name is Christi Scarrow. Welcome to Messy Leadership, where we talk about the hard stuff in managing people. Today, I'm really excited to welcome Nima Fotovat, who is the co-founder and president of Riverside Natural Foods, the home of Made Good, which is an amazing brand that I know I feed to my children. So thank you so much, Nima, for being here today.
My pleasure.
So, we're talking about sort of those leadership lessons. And what I'd love to hear from you is what was an important lesson that you learned early in your career that shaped who you are as a leader today?
That's a great question. I was lucky enough that I got into the family business and I was sent into, we had a small bakery and I was sent into the back of a bake shop and we had maybe 7, 8 employees there and responsible for them to make sure that we make and deliver what we are scheduled to do. So it was my first forte into managing people. And so no experience, thrown into the pool, learn how to swim. And so I had some preconceived notions around what a manager was, and it was about holding people accountable, being forceful and demanding. So I go in, I got to be the boss. You got to fear me. I am coming in. So that was the approach I took right off the bat going in as a leader. And that was an assumption I made that that's how you manage, that's how you lead is through force and through, I would say, fear. You create that accountability on the other side. And so in that, what I noticed is I didn't feel good. So, you would have these interactions. I would walk out of the plant floor, I would go to my desk and I wouldn't feel good. And I imagine the other side didn't feel good either. And after a while, performance didn't improve that much, and I wasn't feeling better. So I'm like, this is not working really well. So I went to the other side of the pendulum, which is I went in the softer, gentler, kinder, friendlier, I'm your friend approach. And although it was easier because I didn't feel bad, but what happened is that performance was, or that I wasn't clear. I wasn't holding folks accountable. I wasn't giving direct feedback. And so I wasn't also getting the results weren't coming in. So yes, we were feeling better, but at the end, I wasn't delivering on my commitment to the business, and that didn't make me feel good. Maybe at the moment I felt good. So and then what it's interesting because what would happen is that would create frustration inside me, and then I would blow up. So I would swing back to the other side. So it became a pendulum of leadership going from firm to soft to firm to soft. And like, I think that's the journey, that's been my journey, is trying to calibrate over the years to where is that place where I am clear, I can hold people accountable, but be a coach and encourage you and celebrate your successes as well. And so that's been where I have. So I think leadership and managing business people is a huge responsibility. We hear more and more how people, how they feel when they leave work and go home is a direct result of what their experience was at home at work. But it doesn't mean that you're gonna be soft. So it's like doesn't my concern, my thing is that it doesn't mean that we are all friends and kumbaya. We're also business. So where is that place where there's firm accountability, clear feedback, but also support and engagement? And that's been my journey. And one of my learnings is that where am I on that continuum? So that's my continuous improvement. Where do I need to be, and how was I when I showed up? How did I hit the mark? Was I too far to the right, too far to the left? So my from the early days of managing people, that's been I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm still working on it, but I think I might the extent of the extremes have narrowed, I would say.
Yeah. And I love that because, as you know, accountability is near and dear to my heart. And I think that's a challenge for so many people, that pendulum that you talk about. And I know accountability is something you're passionate about inspiring in others. And it's, as you're describing it, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. So I guess my follow-up question is, how do you help others to sort of see that pendulum swing in themselves and recognize it?
I think that's where, how do I get others to see that? I think part of that as a leader, first, I need to have the self-awareness to see it in myself, because I need to lead by example. And part of giving feedback, I usually use myself as the example of the feedback as well in giving feedback. And then in feedback, I've learned the SBI model, situation, behavior, impact. So when it comes to providing feedback around how either end of the spectrum, if someone is there, I think it's important to use, not be critical in my feedback, but really use the SBI model, which I found helpful in delivering a message in a way that's well received. Now, in my experience, this is a very common thing, like ending up at the two ends of like this is a common trap, I would say. It's a human trap. We find ourselves trapped in either end. So it's not unique to me, and I don't think it's unique to a few managers. I think it's common out there, and I think we're all working towards it. We're all have our comfort zone, and we need to find where that balance is. So it's not a foreign concept when you bring it up to people. So that's when we talk about it. I don't think it's something that we all try to calibrate as leaders. And so I have found that as we have that conversation, that feedback when I deliver it, it's not like, oh, I've never thought about it, or this is something new to me.
So people can definitely relate to it, especially if you said you're sharing your own struggle with it, which I know is
Yes.
part of the purpose of this, is to say leadership's hard for everybody, no matter where you've been in, where you are in your organization. Leadership is difficult. So
It's very difficult. I mean, it's not easy. It's definitely not easy, and self-awareness, and then reflecting on yourself, and then calibrating, and then trying again. And one thing that I found that, we have our first nature and second nature, and our first nature is our default position. And if we're not aware, we tend to fall into our first nature pretty quickly. So really having that awareness ingrained in us, it takes a lot of work and effort. And so for me, knowing what my first nature is, that I tend to rush to maybe making judgments and conclusions, and then knowing that, and then trying to replace that with a second nature, which is how would I approach this, be curious, ask questions, So it is, leadership is, I mean, at least for me, maybe others, it comes more naturally than others, but for me, it's, I'm a work in progress.
I think that's a really important aspect, and that self-awareness is so foundational. And just a bit of an on-the-spot question. This is not an easy answer, but is there a way you've found to help people to build self-awareness? I'm still trying to figure that out. Is there any any thoughts you have on, how to get people maybe a little bit more self-aware, understanding their first nature, and how to maybe think about how to let go of that, because we all have our natural preferences.
We do, and it is and it's so deeply ingrained in us. And I think it's part of, as we have learned to live life, it is become the reason we have our first nature. It's our defense mechanism. I believe it's my defense mechanism to deal with this world. So at some point in my childhood, I've made decisions that this is how I need to show up in order to protect myself. So I think that is, and I believe we all have that first nature, and it shows up in different ways in different people because of circumstances that have happened to us. I mean, self-awareness is a journey, and I think you have to have a curious mindset to want to do that. But I think once you start to go down the path of wanting to be a better person and wanting to know more about yourself, I think that's the key enabler. I don't think there's a quick fix. I think it's the desire. How do you create the desire to want to do this? I don't think the solution. So why is it important? How do we ignite the desire in people? I think that's where I would start, and I think I'm of the school of thought, maybe it's controversial, but I think desire comes through hardship.
Mm,
I think, people are willing to change and will be open to it when there is things are not working out or there are consequences and there's hardship. And I need that. That's just human nature. I know I am like that. Like if I don't have to change and if things work the way I want them to work, then why would I put the effort into change? So I do think the opportunities that exist with people in influencing others, I think that there has to be a desire. And I think for desire to exist, I think they've got to see a positive and a negative. They got to see the positive of what would happen if I put the effort in. So there's got to be hope and a pull, and there's got to be a negative of what's the consequences of it not happening so that I can make the choice to put the effort in because it's not easy. That's the thing. It's not easy. And things that are not easy require us to make a conscious decision to move towards that.
yeah, I love that. And as you talked about, if you're role modeling that desire for growth, that desire for curiosity, then that hopefully encourages others to do the same. So
That's a great point. I appreciate you raising that. I do think that leading by example is a huge one. I think when people see you change, I think that would give and see the impact of it. That creates that hopefully desire in others as well. And ultimately they have to want it, but it's a good motivator, it's a good catalyst for wanting to do the work. I agree. And I am of the opinion that I cannot create desire in others. I don't think I mean, I can make things happen in people. People have to want to do it. A and B, I'm not a big fan of preaching and saying you should do something. I'm more of a lead by example, and you got to find your own why as to why you need to do what you need to do. I think it's very difficult to try to get people. People have to do it because they want to do it, not because I'm telling them or I'm the boss and say, I mean, ultimately, as inspirational as I may be, and I think ultimately the spark has to come out of the person, number one. Number two, I have no right. I don't give myself a right. If I'm not working on myself and if I'm not leading by example, I have no right in being the one that. And then when I get to that, when I do lead, when I do work on myself, I think the advantage that I have is I can share experiences, and that's really powerful. Shared experiences becomes a really powerful way to motivate people because I'm not coming from this theoretical place. I'm coming from this lived experiences place where I can.
and I have no doubt if you're starting at a small bakery of 7 people to the business you've been able to build now, you've had to adapt and change. So people have seen that willingness and seen the differences. So that's an exciting place to be. My next question, which is you're starting to allude to it, but the work in progress that you are, some of the messy bits of leadership that are still challenging for you now, and some of the strategies that have helped you to overcome them.
Yeah, but I think life in general is messy, whether it's, I mean, I like the word messy because messy, not only work life is messy, home life is messy if you have kids, everything is just, and by that I mean, I wake up in the morning and I have my plans and view of the day and what I want the day to be, and then what happens and what actually materializes may be completely different. So that is what I call messy.
Yeah, yes.
And so what I have, what I'm trying to do, the work in progress for me is moving from reacting to it to responding to it. So I have been very much led by emotions and reacting and trying to control things and moving from that to responding. And so I have some techniques for me, and I heard that in cities that are in close proximity to volcanoes, they have something called an early volcano signal, where if there's a little bit of an eruption in the volcano, they send a signal to the city that says, okay, there may be an eruption. So what I have, I'm using that as an analogy here because I have this I'm trying to find what is my early volcano signal inside me where I start to when I start to see myself reacting, where my hands are starting to get sweaty, my heartbeat starts to race, and I'm now getting, emotionally tangled up in this. And so try to pick that signal before words start coming out of my mouth and I start to react to a situation. Can I continue to look at that or pay attention to that signal? And then when I notice the signal, then pause, walk out, don't respond, take a few deep breaths, and then I can move from a reaction to a response where I really, I don't think this is a matter of even minutes. I think even I've found with seconds can help me. I may not get all the way to a calm place, but at least I'm not, it's a little bit less. And whether it's at home, whether it's with the kids or whether it's at work, I think, and then I can get a better decision because I'm a little bit calmer and I can hopefully, don't say something that I regret, but also maybe come up with a better solution, maybe be more curious and ask more questions before I respond. So I will have options to choose from versus in a respond mode versus in a react mode. I have no options. It's my instincts that's driving me. Now, this is all theory. It sounds really, really good. But in real life, it's amazing the speed at which I can react. Like it's milliseconds. What comes into my head and the distance of the thought to my mouth and the speed that it comes out is extremely quick. It's lightning speed, speed of light. So I think I'm not saying it's easy, but I've seen it. I practice it. It works. It really does. And I think part of it is being aware as well throughout the day that, hey, today I'm going to be more, I think, and again, I'm going to go into meditation, prayer, be a little bit more centered in the day, starting your day. I think mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, all of that feeds into the same way we need to take care of our body and what we eat and exercise. I think we need to do the same. And so we can't expect to be doing something like what I just said, but not put in the upfront work as well.
Yeah, I love that distinction between reacting and responding. It's almost connecting back to that first initial instinct, as you said, that your first nature is in the reaction. But if you can pause it even for a millisecond and recognize it in yourself, then you can almost consider, is my first nature the right reaction in this moment, or can I respond in a way that might actually be better for the situation at hand? It's a really neat way of thinking of it. Yeah. And I know I'm learning that that's an evolution for me as a leader, and probably as a leader again at home and at work, is that physical reaction. It's not something I think I paid much attention to, but probably in the last 3 or 4 years going like, how am I feeling? Am I actually feeling that? And why am I feeling that? And I think that is really important. I don't know that's talked about a lot yet, but I love it. So I could probably ask you a zillion questions, but I want to ask one more before we close down, which is just advice. Your advice. You've gone through a lot in your career. What advice do you have for people who are maybe struggling to manage and influence others?
Yeah, I'll be quick on, because as you said, there's so much here that we can talk about, but I would view them as two different things: manage versus influence. In managing, one of the things I've learned is managing people is a very, very big responsibility. I think we can send people home happy or sad or depressed, and I think that And if they have a family at home and they had a crappy day, then the family has a crappy day. So there's this trickle impact or effect of that. And then there's the career path. So I have personally, I'll admit on this live podcast that I have made choices that have also impacted people's careers because I wasn't, whether I promoted people too early and then it didn't work and they left the company and they could not get a job in that level. I think just understanding how important it is because job and someone's work is their livelihood. And being a manager, I am now responsible for someone's career. That is like, to me, it's like, and then I see everyone wants to be a manager. Like, give me someone to manage. I'm like, do you really know what it really like? So to me, I think the advice I have is don't take that responsibility lightly. Is my advice. Is really, really, really get a mentor, get the resources you need. Really take the job of managing people seriously. It's it should be you are a servant and this is where you are serving the person you are managing. You have to add value to the person you're managing. So that's on the manager side. I mean, there's other ones, but I think if I had to put one, if there's one big one, I think that would be the one. And on the influence, what I'm doing more and more now is instead of trying to influence on the how or even on the what, trying to get alignment on the why. So if I can get the why, then it's a lot easier to go down the other way. I used to try to say, this is how we should do it. And I used to think that I need to influence you on how you do the job. I think it's influencing on the why. And if we can get alignment on the why, it's so much easier. And maybe their how is better than our how. So then we can figure all of that out. But it's where to influence, I think, is where we get stuck. It's like my way, and I want to influence so that things are done my way. But that's we're stuck on the how, and that's not where influence, in my opinion, should sit. I think the influence is on the why axis. No, it's not mathematics, it's not that axis, but it starts with the why.
Yeah. And as you said at the beginning, it's that evolution of where you felt as a leader, I had to direct, I had to control, I had to tell people what to do. That's what my job is. I'm supposed to do that. And then you realize, but that's not really what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to think about them as a human and the life impact that I'm having on them and how they can feel connected with the why so that they are wanting to be a part of this and not doing it out of fear, which is you mentioned in the beginning is some of the lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, this has been an amazing conversation. I really appreciate everything you share. I know it's so valuable to my audience. So I really appreciate, Nima, your sharing all of this. And if you're listening to this podcast and are looking for ways to navigate the messy bits of leadership in your life, please take a look at some of the show notes or try to find me at christiscarrow.com. So thank you very much.